something that I love to go see. And it wasn't maybe until I was in high school that I started to look at film more critically, and that's when I was going to the video store when those still existed, and just kind of ransacking the shelves and going back into the older decades of things that before my time, and started looking at films of the 70s and then even earlier than that. And then I ended up taking a class in film one summer at a college and learning about film theory and technique. Not so much, again, from the production side, but it just really sparked my imagination. I still wasn't even thinking about it. I wasn't one of those kids that had a camcorder growing up. My dad had an 8mm camera. I wasn't taking it out and making movies. It just really never crossed my mind. It didn't seem like it was something practical to do. So it wasn't until I was in college that I got connected with a group of students who were into filmmaking, and I worked on a student project, and it seemed like a lot of fun, and then worked on another student project, and that's when it started to click. Maybe this is something that I really do want to pursue. And at that point in time, I was already going down a path of engineering and realized I don't want to be an engineer. So I really had to shift course midstream when I was in college. So that's when I kind of figured out I wanted to become a filmmaker, but it has been a very long road for me, and I had a lot to learn. Like I said, it didn't start when I was younger. So, I started to write, and I started to try to take on production jobs as much as I could. And then when I got out of college, though, I wasn't really a risk taker. And so I went into corporate America for a year, realized that didn't work, got out, decided to move up to Boston where my then girlfriend was, and who's now my wife, and actually went to business school to get an MBA, but I did it because I wanted to learn business for film. Always kind of thinking practically as opposed to taking risks, thinking I'd like to learn the producing side of things, but I was always writing at the same time and trying to figure out short films and always helping other people with their projects. And just slowly but surely just wore kind of every hat you can wear in terms of filmmaking, starting as a production assistant and all the way through. I mean, I've done almost every job, I think, at this point in time. So finished up grad school, kept plugging away, got to work on a major feature film as the assistant to a producer, learned a lot as far as that goes, but still really wasn't ready to jump in and take the big risks. So kept doing jobs in corporate America for a while, started a family, and then finally our family decided to move out to New Mexico, and we're having our second kid, and I decided I was going to stay home. I was going to, basically be the primary caregiver for the kids, and I was really going to focus all in on my writing, on screenwriting. And so that's what I've been doing now for almost 8 years, and it's definitely paid dividends. I got better as a screenwriter. I'm still learning a lot. I've been able to do a lot more short films as well, both my own and producing others, and then finally was able to produce my first feature film as writer-director back in last year, 2014, and we're bringing it out this year in 2015. Getting started, I think, is harder for me. Like I said, I'm always trying to figure out what's that next story, and I get in my own way a lot of times with that, because I very quickly can think of a dozen movies that have already maybe tackled that story in a similar way, and so I'm always trying to find something that's different or unique or original. And since I'm also my biggest critic, I can just shoot down ideas really fast. So I think getting started is harder for me. Once I've gotten over that initial hurdle and I think I've found something that's interesting to me, then I'm much more motivated to keep it moving forward. But definitely getting started is harder. I can think of like two things when I was younger, and at the time I didn't realize they were influencing me when it came to filmmaking. But when I was really young, not really young, when I was in about 4th grade, I guess it was, there was somebody in my school that was years older than me. He was actually in class with my brother, and he got cast in, and we were in Delaware, and this student got cast in a major film that wasn't shooting where we were, and it was this it's this great film called Lucas, and it launched a lot of careers. Corey Haim, Winona Ryder, Charlie Sheen, like a lot of these people. It's one of their early films. It's this really great coming of age movie, and this guy ends up playing like the best friend of Corey Haim. And I just thought that was amazing, that there's somebody that like I was familiar with that was actually going to show up in a real film. And I remember going to see it in the theater and just kind of being blown away by that. And the movie was really good too. And then about 5 years later, another film actually came to Delaware was filmed in Delaware. And they came to my school and they cast kids the year behind me, a bunch of 7th graders at the time, to be extras. And that movie was Dead Poet Society, and it's one of my all-time favorite films. And again, just this idea of this world that I just never really thought of, but I was always fascinated with, coming to something locally, really sparked my interest. And again, I hadn't really thought about how I would get involved with that, but those two movies definitely inspired me over the years. And then so I guess when I turned to the idea of actually making films, I realized, like I know people who got connected, and so it wasn't so foreign to me. But again, at the time, it was just cool, I guess. But ultimately, I think those movies kind of have always stuck with me because it was, just something that I hadn't expected to happen. I think one mistake that I know I've made is, not seeking out feedback early in the process, in the creative process. Like I was talking about earlier, writing for me is pretty solitary, and I like to wait until I have a script in a state that's worth getting feedback. But I think people also are really afraid to hear feedback on their work, either the written part or if they film something and get some feedback. Because not everybody's going to see it the way you do. And so you do need to seek out feedback. You do need to get constructive criticism from people. And then it's really important, though, to read that criticism carefully. When it comes to screenwriting, a lot of screenwriters talk about getting notes on their scripts and finding the note behind the note. So in other words, sometimes you get notes and they don't seem to make any sense, or they don't seem like they're coming from a place where the person understands what you were trying to do story-wise. And yet they probably have a valid point and there's something that could be improved in your script. And so sometimes you really have to sit with that feedback, either it's on your script or on your short or on your feature, and think about why was it a problem for that particular person, and is there some way I can make my script or my film better? And I think a lot of times we're too afraid to make those changes. So that's definitely one thing that I think could be somewhat universal for filmmakers in terms of mistakes. There's a filmmaker, I guess, who I really admire a lot, and I'm always excited to see what he's coming up with next, and that's probably Jeff Nichols. People probably are most familiar with his work from the movie Mud with Matthew McConaughey. But I had the opportunity to interview him at the Austin Film Festival as one of their panels, and he was really generous with his time on that panel. But why I think I'm inspired by him is that his first film, Shotgun Stories, was a very small film. I think it came out in 2004. Not a lot of people had seen it. He was fortunate enough to get picked up by the Berlin Film Festival for that, but really nobody else wanted to pick it up. I think in the States it did get picked up by the Austin Film Festival because he was living in Austin at the time. So it was a really quiet movie. And so he didn't get a lot of support. But from that, he started to make a name for himself, but then it still took him, I think, another 4 years to get something put together, and then that was another quiet film called Take Shelter, but it got into Sundance and started to do well, and then from there he was actually able to make Mud, which is a script that he had written way before the other two when he was in college. And to see a script like that, which he had written so long ago, actually come to fruition and executed so well, and actually cast with people like Matthew McConaughey and Reese Witherspoon, but also a really fantastic young cast, is definitely inspiring to me. So I'm really looking forward to his future films. I'm always looking for a really good story, and I gravitate towards films that are usually character-driven as opposed to maybe action-oriented. I do like going to see, a good popcorn movie every once in a while, but I really don't seek them out too much. So again, if it's something that's really character driven, I love stories with really flawed protagonists who are struggling with something internally. And after the fact, if I'm still thinking about the movie and the choices that the characters made, and if it surprised me, not so much with twist and turn story-wise, but more of how the characters chose their paths within the story. I think those are the types of films that I definitely like the most. And again, like I said, I kind of seek out these smaller movies because I have a lot of admiration for filmmakers who can take a story that may not be something that a mass audience is gonna come to, and yet still have the fortitude to actually make their vision come to life. So yeah, I think that's ultimately what comes down to me. Again, great story, character driven. Well, a couple. I mean, one, and this is something that you were involved in. We did a short film for the Duke City Shootout called Preschool's a Bitch. I hope that's okay to put on your audio. And that was just a lot of fun. It was really my introduction to a lot of the local cast and crew here, because I'd only lived in Albuquerque for a year at the time we made that. And we got to screen that for an audience of about 800 people at the Kiva Auditorium. So that was a huge crowd, and it played really well to that crowd. So you don't get too many opportunities to show a movie of any length to a crowd of that size, at this point in my filmmaking career. So that was definitely a big highlight. And just to see the reaction, the big audience reaction from that was really good. In terms of my feature film, we got to have a somewhat of a private cast and crew and Kickstarter VIP screening for 400 people here in town. And it's interesting because it's a drama, not a comedy. And so since you don't get as many laughs, you don't really know how the audience is reacting. And it's nice to hear more stuff after the fact of how excited people were about the film. So that was another good instance. And even before that, though, probably my favorite screen so far of the feature film sense is we did a test screening of a rough cut, and we had that test screening with over 300 6th and 7th graders. And they were quiet for about the first, 15 or 20 minutes of the movie, and then there finally was like a joke that broke the ice for them. They all laughed, and then after that they got really into the movie, and they started to kind of react with the movie on screen, and at one point they even cheered when like one of the antagonists storms off screen, and at the time I didn't know if it was because they liked the character or because they hated the character and they just wanted the character to be more mean. So just actually getting the visceral reaction from a bunch of middle schoolers, who was just definitely a target audience for that film, was gratifying as well. So those are some of the more memorable, I guess, moments I've had with my personal films. So my advice would be live simply. Especially if you're on your own. Know that if this is a world that you want to go into, it's a tough road, and you got to find ways to make ends meet. And if you're willing to live cheaply and work hard, you definitely can make a career out of it, but don't expect that career to necessarily, it's definitely not going to be glamorous, that's for sure. Don't do it for those reasons. Don't do it if you want to make a lot of money. You can make a living, just don't go into it think you're going to make a lot of money. I would say also live in a community that's supportive of filmmaking. You definitely can do it wherever you are locally, but you may have a better chance of making a career out of it if you can find a city or a town that has a good infrastructure. So obviously, towns like Los Angeles and New York are definitely hubs for filmmaking, but places like Albuquerque that do have a good infrastructure and then a very supportive infrastructure are great places to live. If you are in a really small town or community that doesn't have that, you may want to look elsewhere. And then also find a support system, friends and colleagues, seek those out, but also, if you have a very supportive partner in terms of a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend who is not in this industry, that can be really helpful. I mean, the only reason, honestly, that I can do what I do is I have a really supportive wife, and she supports our family financially, and she's supportive of me, and I've made sacrifices to do things for our family, but she's turned around and made this happen for me, and I'm incredibly lucky because of that. And not everybody has that situation, and I'm cognizant of that every single day. So a supportive spouse or partner is also really key.